The first is Dr. Anamika Patel to go on. A very bright young mind, has graduated from Bharati Vidyapeeth Medical College and after a residency in ophthalmology from Mahatma Gandhi Mission Institute of Health Sciences, she moved forward and completed a fellowship in medical retina and UVI at LBPI and is currently practicing at GMR Varalakshmi campus, Visakhapatnam. We shall start off with Dr. Anamika, who is going to be regaling us on the history of thinking and types of thinking, concrete and abstract thinking. On to you, Dr. Anamika.
Thank you, Dr. Ramamurthy, for the kind intro. I'll just share my slides. So on the behalf of my team and on behalf of the LBPI, Dr. Chitra Ramamurthy, it's again a huge heartfelt thank you for giving us the opportunity to come, speak, and teach. So Albert Einstein, we all know him. He once said that the world as we have created, it's a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. And I must say, what a profound statement. So today, this evening, for the next 3 hours or so, we are going to witness the same. So today I'll be speaking on the history of the critical thinking, and following that, I'll take you to the various types of thinking and the clinical and the application in the practice. So my talk I have divided into the Western and the narrative and the Indian narrative. Indian narrative being my personal favorite. So let's take a look for the Western narrative. So about 2,500 years ago, there lived a man known as Socrates. He is still considered the father of the critical thinking. He was of the belief that I cannot teach anybody anything. I can just make them think. And now just for a moment, let's just reflect on this very profound thought that we cannot teach anybody anything. We can only make them think. And I wish and I hope that we all are able to do that. And Socrates was the one who developed the Socratic questioning. And if you ask me, Socratic questioning is just about adding this beautiful word why in front of any statement that is given to you. It's like somebody asks you something and you give a statement and then he says why. You give a reason and again, the person doesn't stop there and ask you, but why? And then again, you give a reasoning and the person asks you, okay, but why? So it is all about asking the questions which gives you a clarity and gives your thought process a logical consistency. Now let's leap into the Middle Ages where Thomas Aquinas, now he was an Italian domination, a very influential philosopher, theologian and a jurist of his time. And he himself believed that those people who think critically, they do not always reject the established beliefs. Rather, they reject only those beliefs that lacks the reasonable foundations. Coming to the beautiful Renaissance period, from the France, we had the Francis Bacon, who was very concerned with the way the people use their mind, rather misuse their minds in seeking knowledge. The very first book which came in the critical thinking was from him, which he wrote upon the advancement of learning. And he said that critical thinking faculty is extremely important. And he really put a lot of importance in studying the word empirically. He in fact laid the foundation for the modern science with his emphasis on the information gathering process. And then 50 years later, Rene Descartes, now he's one of the most sought after minds when it comes to the critical thinking. He wrote this book, Rules for the Direction of the Mind. Now, this is considered the second text so far in the critical thinking if you look into the history. And he developed and introduced to the world the stepwise approach to the critical thinking. He was of the belief that every part of thinking, it should be questioned, it should be doubted, and it should be tested. The same thing what we see in today as well. It's all about that what we speak about the evidence-based practice. It is that one person says something, you do not stop at it. Now just reflect on the Socratic questioning itself. This is of the same similar thought that is happening. And then in the 18th century, as the critical thinking and its reasoning, everything was developing, two very important texts came into the world, and one was related to the economics by Professor Adam Smith, who wrote on the wealth of nations, and the another one on the reasoning. It was by the Immanuel Kant, who actually wrote the Critique of the Pure Reason, is considered still one of the very important texts in the art sciences. And then in the 20th century, William Graham Sumner, he wrote this very important book. It was actually a pathbreaker of those times, where he wrote Folkways, which was a study of the sociological importance of the usage, manners, custom, etc. He was a professor at Yale University, and he wanted his colleagues and his students to have a very important faculty, which is the critical faculty. He felt, and he has written in his books, that school education, they kind of make people orthodoxy. The men and women, when they are taught only one pattern, they turn into a lath. The idea is to keep questioning and to keep reasoning. And then in the modern world, John Dewey, who was a successor, he was also on the similar lines. He felt that the reflection is very important. So far, in the last few minutes, I have asked all of you to reflect on the statements. So it's all about learning from the experience. We learn from reflect when we reflect on the experience. So with this, I finish my narrative on the Western, and let me take you all to the beautiful Indian narrative, which is led by just one person, which is Chanakya. Now, Chanakya, as you all know, that he was a teacher, philosopher, and a strategist in the 4th century before Christ, and he has written Arthashastra. Now, Arthashastra, before I come to the Arthashastra, he is also known as the official kingmaker of India. Now, Arthashastra has a lot of things under it. Like, if you just look at this photograph here, it depicts so many subtopics, be it law, be it theories of war, be it nature of peace, diplomacy, etc. So, back in those days in India, in the ancient India, all the kings, all the rulers, they used to send their kids, basically the princes, so that they can go and would be honed under Chanakya, so that they could learn this Arthashastra, how to go about managing their states. But Chanakya was of the belief that before a student learns anything, it is extremely important that a student's ability of thinking logically should be developed first and foremost. I was really wowed by this statement when I read for the very first time. And Chanakya, he developed a subject which is known as Anvikshiki. Now, Anvikshiki is a Sanskrit term. It is basically made up of two words, Anu and Ikshiki. So, Anu means atom. It is the smallest part of anything. And Ikshiki means an inquisitive person, a person who wants to know, is an inquirer, a thinker, or a researcher, an examiner, or logician, anything, however you want to put it. So, his student learns Anvikshiki before they actually learn the Arthashastra. Such lucky students. So, back in those days, those in 4th before Christ time, Chanakya developed 6 types of thinking: both side, alternate, leadership, creative, lateral, spiritual. There are many more to it, and I'm not going to go into the details of it. But just think about it, how profound it has been. So I've given you the narrative, the Western and the Indian narrative of the thinking. And let me take you to the second objective of my today's presentation, which is type of thinking. Now, today, me and my colleagues, we are going to take you all through the 6 types of thinking which are there in this modern world: concrete, abstract, analytical, divergent, convergent, and creative. So let me take you all to the first 2 types of thinking, that is concrete and abstract. So concrete, as a word in itself, it means a very basic thing. It's your perception. It's your perception in its very, very simple form. That whatever you can perceive through your 5 senses, be it your smell, sight, sound, taste, or touch. So when I show you a photograph like this, where you see the retina which is lifted up, the only thing that comes to the mind is, oh my God, I'm seeing a retinal detachment. So when you just think about that I'm just seeing a retinal detachment without really putting anything to the right or left of that statement, That is concrete thinking. Another example, you are looking at this left eye fundus photograph of a person who had a presentation like this. Now, when you see something like this, where you see there is some subretinal hemorrhage, you are seeing some yellowish thing, the first thing that comes to mind is that I'm looking at a choroidal neovascular membrane. When you just blurt out, when you just say the first thing that comes to your mind, that is the concrete thinking. Let me give you another example. A patient comes to you and he says that I got operated for the cataract surgery and I can't see, and has a photograph like this. Now, the first thing that comes to your mind is that this patient is end off. You're not really going into the details of it, but you're just looking at it and you're acting on the first thought. So I've, over the last 30-40 seconds, I have given you a kind of an understanding of what a concrete thinking is. It's again is based on your senses, the very first thought that comes into your mind. Now let me take you to the another type of thinking, which is known as an abstract thinking. Now, as the word abstract, as we understand, it's about reflecting on any past experience of yours, or when you start kind of comparing what you are looking at, it's actually kind of centered around the reflection of your past or on any experience. So we all have done our residency, and few are still doing that. And all of us know that the central retinal vein occlusion photograph is written in the textbook that it has that tomato splash appearance. Now, why does that word, from where is that word coming from? Tomato splash appearance. It is because it looks like that somebody has splashed the tomato and everything is so bright and, scattered everywhere. And this is how the CRVO looks like. So we are reflecting on a particular pattern of a splashed tomato. So that's the reason why we have that. Let me give you another example. Now, in endophthalmitis, sometimes in candida endogenous endophthalmitis, we get to see a rain cloud appearance. So if the word rain cloud comes, so from where is it coming? It's just because on somebody's abstract thinking that they felt that it looked similar to a rain cloud. Let me give you another example. When you see retinal detachment with the presence of this HST. Now, the reason why it is called HST because it reminds us. It's particularly actually it reflects on our thinking that it is similar to the hot show. Another example we can see is, in suppose if you see a low grade endophthalmitis and you look at a plaque and you think of a plaque, so you are actually reflecting on the pattern. So over last few minutes, I have given you a narrative on the history of the thinking. So look at so many people, they were all there and they have evolved and they have come closer to what we understand what critical thinking is. This all happened in the West. And in our country, in our own ancient India, there was just this one guy, Chanakya, who surpassed everyone and developed the subject known as Anvikshiki, which is so important before we learn anything. And let me just take you all back to what we have reflected, as John Dewey once said, that concrete thinking is all about coming to just one particular thought process when you are just looking at it and you just blurt out. Like when you see an RD, you just say it is RD without actually classifying it. When you see a membrane, you just call it a CNVM or you call it just ENDOF. And abstract thinking is when you actually reflect on any particular idea or any particular experience of yours or any imagination that you have. For example, splash tomato for CRVO or rain cloud for this particular OCD sign. So before I ask Megha to take you to the next type of thinking, I leave you this one question. How many times in your life you all have made a diagnosis based on your abstract and concrete thinking? Over to you, Megha. Thank you.